And I think we are live. All right, Dee, how are you today?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
You do. I am great. Thank you. I'm excited about talking. I'm excited about talking about our topic today. Happy Transformation Tuesday. You know, Dee and I like to bring about topics and have discussions on topics that are going to help to bring about change, transformation, understanding, healing, anything in that realm. And so today is no different. As we all know that it is domestic abuse awareness month. It's always October is always domestic abuse awareness. And so today we are going to have a dialogue, and I call it a dialogue because if you're joining, please engage with us. This topic is a very personal topic to Dee. It is a very personal topic to myself as some of the domestic violence that I grew up witnessing. So there are a lot of deep, sincere conversations that we can have around the topic of domestic violence. And so, with it being the Awareness October, we're going to spend some of our time this month talking about the awareness and talking about some of the things that we can do. Um, One, if we are experiencing any type of domestic violence, but two, if we are, if we have or know someone that is. So, Dee, I'm going to go ahead and share. I'm going to my Facebook and share this to you.
Okay.
If you haven't done that yet,
Okay.
all
Yes,
right. You shared it to yourself already.
I'm gonna share it.
All right.
Yes, I'm gonna
All right.
also share a couple other places.
All right, perfect. So listen guys, here's what I want everybody to understand. The concept, hey Juanita, the concept of domestic abuse awareness month, we must always know that the month is the awareness for everybody to talk about it and do things about it, but I really encourage that it's a domestic abuse awareness every day for everyone, because that topic and
Yes.
and the people who are struggling with domestic abuse does not stop in 1 month. And there are a lot of
No.
times when we put a lot of attention to a topic during the awareness month, and we forget about the importance of it going forward. And so I encourage everyone to please
Yes.
um, understand that this month is where we'll be educating and we'll get educated and we'll make sure everybody's aware, but it's an ongoing struggle and challenge for a lot of people. And it's important that we keep that in the forefront. So, what is domestic abuse? And why are we having that conversation today? So, domestic abuse is any abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, financial, even cyber abuse, because now
Yes.
we have abuse that happens
Yeah.
via technology, that is done by someone in your domestic circle. And who does a
Yes.
domestic abuse happen to? Domestic abuse happen to women, men, children, anyone, even the
Man.
dog, sometimes even your pets.
Yes.
I mean, the fact of abuse happening, it is not, it does not discriminate. So that's not, you don't go, okay, domestic abuse only
No.
happened to this type of people, people without money. It is not that at all. If you were to really check and look at any statistics done, you'll find that 1 in 4 women suffer from domestic abuse. 1 in 5 men suffer from a domestic abuse, and it is even a larger number for children. And then 1 in 7 women are hurt or die from domestic abuse. And the statistic says 1 in 25 men are hurt or die from domestic abuse. So it is still an alarming statistic either way that we
Repeat,
go.
how much again for men?
1 in 25. 1 in 25.
Wow.
Yes. Juanita says, unfortunately, the domestic violence will continue unless the person is willing to get themselves out of the situation. It's okay to ask for help. And so it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I
Yes.
want to share with you is that very concept that you're saying. And Dee is going to share some personal stories, but I'm going to share a story from a perspective of being a boss slash manager slash leader. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and one of the things that I dealt with on a regular basis was dealing and speaking with women who were struggling and suffering in their household from domestic abuse. And it normally starts out where you see their changes in their behavior. As a manager, I saw changes in their attendance, changes in their behavior. Um, a lot of times they're to themselves. They don't speak a lot about what goes on outside of their outside of work or what goes on at home. Um, and then there are those rare times where I would see the bruises, because a lot of times when the bruises are there, they don't show up. But Juanita, one of the things that's really
Yeah.
important that I learned, and at the company I worked for, I had to go through domestic abuse awareness training, and we partnered with some local folks that helped some of the help women locally, but helped some of the women in our organization. And so I had to learn a lot about not just what it is and who it affects, but how to handle it. And one of the biggest thing that we were told is it is not as easy as them leaving the situation. There were many, many reasons why, and there are many, many reasons why now. My employees did not get up and leave the situation. And there are many reasons why now there are lots of women out there that are in a domestic abuse scenario and can't leave or don't know how to leave. And some of it is the uncertainty of what's going on or what will happen to their life once they leave. But a lot of it is because they're living in fear. Big time fear. And the threat to their lives and the threat to others, whether it be their siblings, their parents, their children, the threat is to them is greater than the violence that they are experiencing at the time. And they choose to stay a lot of times to protect. Excuse me. Some of the times they are choosing to stay for monetary reasons. And that has to do with the uncertainty of what happens if I leave. And sometimes they find themselves in situations where the person who's the abuser, that's the person who is the primary breadwinner. And that's the person who takes care of the finances. And because of
Oh,
that, they're afraid to go. Right. So I've learned so
yes.
much about not just the abuser, but the person, the victim, so to speak, who are going through that process at the time that they're going through that unfortunate process. And as a as a leader in that company, there will be an increase. Oh, yes, Sophie, we're going to talk about that. Sophie said during these challenging times, unfortunately, there will be an increase. During these challenging times, Sophie, there has
Yes.
been an increase. As a matter of fact, there were women reaching out silently, children begging to go back to school that they couldn't go back to school
Yes.
because the violence was just, it was heightened, because now you're stuck at home and you don't
Yeah.
have the release. You don't have the place to go. What's that echo? What I'm hearing? Um, so we it is a heightened thing now during the pandemic because a lot of people are stuck at home. It's a heightened thing because a lot of children are stuck. They haven't been able to go out of the household. And so the reason it's called domestic abuse, like I mentioned earlier, it's because it's happening in the house, right? And so if you don't have that
Yes.
escape, then it is those definitely, it's going to be a different statistic, and it's already shown that it increased tremendously during 2020 and during COVID all across the globe. So that's very unfortunate, Sophie. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And Annette said, unfortunate but true. Yes, Annette. And Juanita said, I agree. They're living in fear along with not knowing what's going to happen afterwards or while they're still in the relationship. A lot of people fail to realize you have to watch what you say and do because it may make things worse for the person being abused. Very much so. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that a lot of people have to um, be aware of, and especially um, if you're in authority, an authority figure, if you're a teacher, if you are a leader, if you're the boss of somebody that you work with, and even as a friend, because a lot of people who are struggling with domestic abuse, they will hide that from their very close, very best friends, because they don't want to be judged. They don't know how and what people will say about them. But most importantly, they don't want to be chastised and pushed or
Right.
rushed to leave a situation that they are not ready for to leave. And I know it sounds really weird to maybe people who have never experienced it to think, what do they mean? They're not ready to leave a situation that they're being hurt in, or that their children are being hurt in. But there are many reasons that I've been told over the years in dealing with women like what I'm speaking of, to why they were not ready to leave, why they were afraid to leave. And so we have to, if we're looking to help, we have to help without judgment, and we have to help with not
Yeah.
helping to be the hero, but really helping to be a support. All right, let's see what people have
Yes.
to say. Sometimes someone may become so uncomfortable around their partner and they actually become their partner. They forget who they are, stop doing what they love, distance themselves. You may
Right.
even have to go back and revisit who that person once was, but there's no telling you'll even get that person back. That's a very profound comment, Juanita. Thanks for that. There's oftentimes we do, um yes, across the globe, Annette, it's increased.
Yep.
Oftentimes when we get caught up in situations, we take on that situation as a defense mechanism or as a protection for ourselves. We do what I've seen happen with some of these women who I have encountered over the years. They isolate themselves from the people they love. Sometimes the
Yep.
abuser will move them away, and they will, if they lived in the same state with friends, if they lived in the same state with family, Next thing you know, they're packed up and they're moving like 10 states over, right? And that's
Yep.
really to isolate them and to
Right.
take them away.
For no
Do
support
you?
system. Yep.
Yes. So having a support system is really, really important. And so let's really say this again. If you're just joining or if you're watching on the replay at any point that you're picking this up, we're talking about understanding domestic violence, what it is, who it happens to, the fact that it does not discriminate, and really how to handle that topic with people that might be going through that. Women, men, children. It does not discriminate against um, economic backgrounds, race, none of that. It is just an ugly truth
No.
that we have to deal with. And right now, as Annette mentioned, we have to deal with it tenfold on a larger scale because of the pandemic, and a lot of people are living in what I call a pressure cooker, right? So even without any abuse, even if you're living
Yes.
in a healthy lifestyle, you're still living in a pressure cooker because of everything that's going on around us. And so if you add pandemic, can't go to work, can't go to school, taking care of the kids 24/7, working in the house, not having any type of rejuvenation or relief, then and then you have an abusive partner, whether it be man or woman. We're talking about a serious, serious issue. Okay. Domestic abuse is as much as a pandemic
Yeah.
as COVID is. And domestic abuse as a pandemic was there way
Absolutely.
before COVID-19 showed up. And so we have to not just use
Yep.
October as an awareness, we must use October as an education to keep the awareness going month over month, day over day, hour over an hour, and be aware and open and not judge, but support. So the types of domestic abuse at that point is literally life or death for them, because you never know how far of an extent someone's willing to go to continue to control someone. That's very true. And as a leader in this organization where I worked, and we were an advocate to any organization that support the awareness of domestic abuse, it was really on the forefront, and we looked out for our employees a lot when it came to that topic. But we also lost, in my time working there, we lost a couple of employees that worked in the same building as me, in the same team as me, to domestic violence. And a lot of times
Wow.
this happened in front of their children. And this particular young lady, it happened in front of her mother and in front of her children. So, excuse me. So we must not take this lightly. And we must also not forget that domestic abuse is not just limited to hitting or physical abuse. The emotional
No.
abuse can far just take it causes a lot of physical depression, physical illness,
Mm-hmm.
mental illnesses, and post-traumatic stress disorder. As Juanita is pointing out, it's changed people's personality, so to speak. It's changed who they are because of what they're going through. And then we must not forget sexual abuse. Sexual abuse,
Yep.
especially child sexual abuse, that a lot of people forget to put in as a domestic violence, is also a domestic violence. And the 1 in 5 that was reported for child sexual abuse, as the 1 in 4 for women and the 1 in 5 for men, for regular domestic abuse is going to be higher for 2020. So what can we do? Because we
Yes.
can talk about the statistics and we can talk about how damaging this really is, because it is. But what can we do? And I want to start with children. And the reason why I want to start with children is, but like I opened up to speak about, is that domestic abuse is personal to me because I once was in a sexual abuse household growing up, and in that household there were also physical abuse to some of the other children, and it was common. It was stinking common. It was as if it was
Mm.
okay. And what happens is that when children are raised or growing up in a household where their uncles and aunts and cousins, and it's not a nuclear household with, a mom and a dad, because with a mom and a dad, you can still have some crazy, awful things that happen. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, when you grow up in a crowded household, or if your children or whomever is in a crowded environment, it's a breeding ground for that type of thing to happen. Okay, it is just more likely. And the book that I wrote on Live Your Truth and Break the Cycle spoke a lot about sexual abuse, but it also spoke to some physical abuse. And that physical abuse came about for some of my other relatives, but it was such common as if it was okay. But and as a child, you're going through this thing and you have no refuge because you live here. It's like being tormented. I think that's what I wrote, is to watch others being tormented in their own environment where they're supposed to be safe or feel safe. And so for me, I feel the most what's that feeling like, for empathy and sympathy, even because sympathy you can
Mm-hmm.
feel when you've been there, for children who are stuck in environments that are unhealthy. And I ask you, if you are a educator, if you are a mom, if you are a dad, whomever you are out there, my call to action for you is to be aware, is to pay attention to the signs. The child that's withdrawn, the child that looks depressed, the child that's sad all the time. Pay attention. It is really sad, and it saddens me to even tell a story about my own self. And I'm going to give this story, and then I'm going to switch over to Dee to talk about something that happened in her family as it pertains to domestic abuse for an adult. But before I tell you my story, let me read these two comments. Well said, Stacy. They're just waiting to boil over at that point without a normal routine. They're stuck at home in the situation, especially the children. Just think about how tormented they must feel. Thank you, Juanita. And Erica says, it's like a wound that is in a healing process. You pick at the scab and wince the pain of tugging on the scab. Sometimes you have to rip off the scab. Oh my God, yes. Dig out the infection. Oh, this is so graphic, but I love it. And nurture the healing process. And that's deep. That's deep. I mean, that is giving me a visual like no other. That's giving me a visual like no other. Absolutely. We have to dig in and feel it. And it's not necessarily an
Yeah.
easy thing, especially when we're talking about abuse to children, women who are dependent on their spouses, or spouses who or men who are dependent on these women. Because don't be fooled, guys. Domestic abuse does not discriminate gender or race or anything. Always pay attention to the signs. Yes, please. It's very important. And then Erica says, even those children that act out are attention seekers. Can I just tell you, the children that act out are the ones you really need to be paying close attention to. Not just the ones who are quiet and withdrawn, because the ones acting out are acting out because they're trying to share with us. They're trying to tell us what's going on without using their
Yeah.
words. So let me tell you this story, and then I'm going to have Dee talk about something that happened in her family. So I grew up in Jamaica, and I used to go to the school. It was an all-girls Catholic school. And fancy smancy, all these, very uppity families and all of that stuff. I was not one of those, by the way. I grew up in Kingston, in the ghettos of Kingston, just so you know. But that's the school I went to. I was afforded that opportunity. And one day, I didn't have rose bushes at home. I have lots of rose bushes now. If you guys ever look through my feed, sometimes you'll see me. I will post a rose or a beautiful flower because I've always loved flowers. So I think I might have been 11 or 12 years old. I don't remember the age. And I had some friends. They had beautiful rose gardens at their house. And one of my friend decided to bring me some red roses from her rose bush. And I remember like it was yesterday, guys. Dig this. I'm 49 years old. I'm talking about a 12-year-old girl imprint. And this is how serious it is. Why when Erica said, dig at it, fix it, nurture it, it's because if you don't, these things may bother you. Now, this doesn't bother me anymore, but it's a story I must share. And I'm sharing it for educators and people out there dealing with children. It's very important. So this young lady, she brought me these roses. They were gorgeous roses, and they were sitting in a little like mason jar, and they were sitting on my desk. And I think I was in home
Mm-hmm.
ec. And my teacher walked up. I'll never forget her ugly face. And yes, I said it. Because what she said was so ugly. I'll never forget her ugly face. She walked up and she stood over the desk and she goes, "Oh, wow, those roses are really pretty." And I said, "Thank you." And she goes, "But they must not have came from your garden because your face always looks so sour." Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
What?
But, but
Oh my.
keep in mind, this ugly inside and out teacher of mine when I was 12 years old did not know that the face of the sour 11 or 12-year-old. You never asked me, not one day. I came to your class every day, but you never asked me what was wrong with me. You never asked, how can I help? You never
Wow.
asked, why don't you ever smile, little Stacy? You never asked. But the day when I had
Yeah.
beautiful roses that was given to me, and I'm enjoying my rose, you told me, you made that comment. What this teacher didn't know, here's the profoundness of this, that I plea educators, moms, dads, anyone dealing with children to pay attention. What she didn't know is that the 11-year-old sour face, as she want to call it, was being sexually molested in her household. She was struggling with domestic abuse, and therefore there was nothing other than hurt and pain that would come
Wow.
out, confusion and hurt and pain that would come out of that face. There is no stinking way anything else would come out. Do you understand? So let this story, that I think this is the second time I ever told this story because it popped in my head the other day when I was trimming my rose bushes. This is how imprints work. I was
Oh
trimming my
wow.
rose bushes, and I take pictures of my roses for a good friend of mine. Hi, Kiki, if you watch this, I'm giving you a shout out. And I take pictures of my rose bushes and I send to her. And I've been doing that all through COVID to lift her spirits from not being able to come to visit us and connect. And I'm out there trimming my rose bushes and taking a picture of my rose. And that's the imprint that popped in my head, guys. Okay. So listen to me. If you're an educator, if you are a coach, if you are a coach of a child, if you run a daycare, any of those things, it is your responsibility to pay attention to the children. It is your responsibility to educate yourself, to go out there and take classes, to understand the signs to look for, to know what to say and what not to say. Because 11 or 12-year-old me, I don't remember which one of the years, would have loved to have more of a compassionate conversation with my teacher than to tell me how shitty my face looked, without understanding why my face looked like shit. And I don't have another word for it. But if you are going through that type of emotional pain, there is nothing else that your face can do, dear teacher. You understand? So please, guys, pay attention. Pay attention to these children. Do not disregard their acting out. Do not disregard their faces looking like it's looking. There might be something deeper. You're welcome, guys. I tell my stories because I don't keep my stories, because my stories will help somebody else. And no matter how much I have to dig deep to find them, when they come up, I find it very important to share them. And so that story is no longer mine. Once I let it out, the healing began, because I remember how ugly her little face was in the first place to come out and say those ugly things.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead, D.
Let me say thank you for sharing that story. I don't remember ever hearing that, but I appreciate that. And I know that somebody that's listening to this needed to hear that. Whew.
You're
Wow.
welcome. I know.
And I
I
was
know.
talking.
Breathe.
Thank you. Yeah. Wow.
Okay. It's
That
okay. Breathe.
flashback in that story. We got all month to discuss it, but breathe. All right. Thank you. I'm
Yes,
gonna
breathe.
share. I'm gonna talk about my niece in a minute, but I'm gonna talk about me when we were talking about the different types of domestic violence and abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I in my marriage, which was I thought was the greatest marriage ever, because I've only been married once, and it started out great, but it was I guess I was in a financial part. Mine was financial, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
To other stuff going on. I was a foster parent to nieces from another state, and there was a lot of stuff going on with that. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff going on with that, and I guess it took. Money was not an issue for him. So to bring in me, my family, and all the mess there, it did something to him, if that makes sense. So it was the point that what do? You got mess going on with my family. I can't go back there, and then mess, and it brought the mess to my house in Virginia. That makes sense.
Yes.
And yeah, it was like a financial abuse, and it
Yes.
didn't click until several years ago. I heard Gloria Mayfield talking about her husband, her first husband, how she'd go to work and everything was okay, but when you get home, heart sinks. That was me, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? I didn't know I was going through it, but I didn't know what it was. So until she shared her story, I didn't know what to call my story. Thing a thing.
Yes.
That makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Wow, I'm gonna have to tap on that one because that's still raw. I just didn't. That's still that real for me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but I want to say this about that. It's the financial. A lot of people, when they think domestic abuse, they just think that if somebody is beating up on someone, and it is so much more. Because if that person is the primary breadwinner, and if that person is the person that, if you leave them, you may be out on the streets, so you think, or if you leave them, what am I going to eat? What am I going to do for my children? Then it becomes a situation where you feel stuck. And that's why, as I said earlier, it's very important that we don't judge the people we're trying to support, because we really don't know why they feel the need to stay where they are. It's no different than a child who is sexually abused and is told, if you tell your mom or dad, I'm going to either hurt you or I'm going to hurt them. Most of the times they tell these children they're going to hurt them, right? Or I'm sorry, they're going to hurt their parents, not them. And so you find
Parents,
the
yeah.
kid, and in domestic abuse, the abuser will say, I'm going to hurt the children, or I'm going to hurt your mom or your dad. And so you find that people are in this because they're trying to protect not necessarily themselves, but they're trying to protect everybody else. One woman who I dealt with said that she
Yes.
didn't want to leave because she didn't know what would happen to her children if she left. Where would they live? What would they eat? You
Yeah.
see? So we must educate ourselves on the signs to look for. So I already talked about children and some of the signs you can look for, and they're acting out their behaviors. A lot of children, they will wet the bed or wet themselves. There's a lot of different anxious behaviors that come with sexual abuse. So I beg, if you are in that type of work where you deal with children, it is very important that you stay educated, stay aware, and pay close attention. Stop putting your ego and your nastiness and behaviors in front of the fact that these children may be going through some serious stuff.
Yes.
And Dee, are you ready to talk about what happened with your niece?
Okay, niece was Farley. Her name was Totten, if anybody knows her. And Lynette was a son and two daughters, and she had two grandsons at the time of her murder. She was murdered she went missing. Let me stop there. As she was growing up, her and my younger sister Kim, they were really close, and unfortunately, we all attracted to a certain type, right? So Lynette got involved with this older man, which was a red flag for me. So I talked to my mom and her, and of course they thought I was crazy. I don't know if they thought I was jealous or what, but nobody listened to me. So Lynette was separated from the family. You know what I'm saying? Like, her and the kids would never come around. And the times that I've seen them come around, she sat in the vehicle with this man. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't she didn't hang out with the family like the family was all together before. So eventually she just like, I stopped seeing her. So I had moved to Virginia, and I seen one of her daughters had posted on Facebook talking about, if you see our mom, tell her to come home. Well, that's a problem. I started calling my other sisters, and we was trying to find out what happened to her sister. Come to find out that I think she had been missing maybe, and her kids were looking for her on Facebook. So my sisters in West Virginia start contacting the offices, and I was here in Virginia working, and I seen on the news, my coworker was like, "D, come here, talking about some lady that's missing in West Virginia." And I heard her husband say, the first thing they do is they suspect a spouse if somebody go missing. And I was like, I'll be damned. I bet he did something to her. So anyway, yeah, I'm not sure of all the details, but I know that they had found a body not in Raleigh County where we're from, but a county over. They found a naked body cut, dismembered in in a hole, like a man. And my oldest sister was dealing with some issues, but the best of my knowledge that I can remember, try to block some stuff out, which don't help, but she gave a DNA sample, and months went by, and they finally found out. It came back and said it was her. My sister died that day, and
Oh.
we had to have a double funeral for my sister and her oldest daughter because it's
Mm.
there. Like, the news people went and interviewed her co-workers, and they said how he come to work, and he would like flatten her tires and come threaten her at work and stuff, and nobody did anything. You know what I'm saying? When she's
Mm.
dead, then everybody want to come forward. So what I'm asking anybody that's watching tonight, if you see somebody you suspect something, say something. Don't wait for them to die, you know, because when somebody's dead, they can't come back. I know we can't. It's not as easy as that for a fact. For financial reasons, I didn't leave. Because if
Yes.
I'd have left there, where you can go back to, because I had left my job and left everything to come here. But if you say something, when you see something, if you can't help them, I don't know, somebody do something. I don't know, because everybody's situation is different. But don't be silent. Don't do it, because our family has never been the same. Her
Mm.
kids are, my niece's kids are. Oh my gosh, pray for them. Pray for them, because when they lost their mom, the bottom fell out. The bottom fell out.
I love you, Dee.
All right, Stacy, please take it.
I will, sweetie. I love you, Dee. I love you. And that's
Thank
very
you.
brave.
Thank you.
It's very brave, and you know, guys, send your love, send your positive energy, send it all out to Dee and their family, because like I said, this is the month where we we dive into the education and the awareness. And then during this time is when a lot of the things will come to the forefront. Thank you for sharing, because it's when we share our stories, that the ones that we're healed from and the ones that we're still struggling with, that other people will be able to gain something from it, learn from it. And Dee, you're getting a lot of love from the chat. They're sending prayers, they're telling you to keep strong. And I appreciate you sharing and being as vulnerable as you are right this minute, because it is with that vulnerability that you will definitely be able to touch and reach somebody else out there. And think about this, guys. If domestic violence affects 1 in 4 women, that means within your circle, there is someone. If you need to step away for a moment, please feel free. Within your circle, if
Okay.
you're good, um, if it's
Yeah.
1 in 4, if it's 1 in 4, and most of us have more than 4 friends or more than 4 people in our circle, there is a possibility that there is someone within our circle that is affected by some level of domestic abuse, emotional, physical, sexual. Like I said, there are many. It is a possibility that that's an issue for someone you know. And so that's why it's important to educate ourselves. It's never good enough to say, it's not happening to me, or it's not happening in my household, so I'm good. That's never good enough, because it's the strong ones, it's the people who are not broken by a situation, that can help to pull up those who are struggling with that situation. And I promise you, it took me educating myself, understanding domestic abuse from many levels, working with women and men. Um, when I was a leader in an organization that was very keen and aware, and fostered an environment that looked after, supported, and helped employees who were struggling, I had to step up to the plate a lot. So some of the things that you can do, I remember having to do this for an employee before. I gave her a code word, and the code word was something work related. So if the thing was, if you ever needed me to call the police, this is your code word. And I gave her the code word, and it was work related. So you can either call me and talk that code word, or you can text me that code word, and then I would know that I need to call the police. Um, and so there are little things that you can do to help people feel safe. You can't just say to people, he's hitting on you, he's hitting on the children, he's abusing you. You just need to pack your bags and go. And trust me, I once had that mentality way back when, before I taught myself some things and recognized that that's just not how it works. Everybody's makeup, everybody's abilities, we're all different. Everybody's beliefs, everybody's
Yeah.
situations, we're all different. So there's no comparing how I would handle a situation. If I'm going to be a badass, don't mean Dee can be a badass, because that's not her approach, and vice
Right.
versa. And so we have to make sure that when we're encouraging people, we're encourage them not to be the hero, but we encourage them to be a support. There's a difference. In encouraging people to, and you're being the hero, then you're trying to, okay, I'm going to help them out of this situation. So here's the step one, do this. No. A support is, what can I do to help? When can I help? If not now, here is what I'd like to offer when
Mm.
you're ready. Help them find resources. Sometimes
Yes.
they don't even have the strength to type something in Google. Help them find resources so that when they are ready, you know, offer resources, so just be that support. Don't be that force, because if you're being a force, you may lose them altogether and they may never tell you anything. So let's see. I have
Okay. I
Erica
think
says, go
this
ahead.
is the hand signal. Oh, thank you. I think this is the hand signal. If you on a Zoom or something and somebody does this,
Yes.
that's another way of them asking for help. So for people who,
Ah,
yes. So if you see somebody doing that on a Zoom or something, you need to figure what they need. Okay.
okay. That's good to know. I didn't know that.
All right. Go ahead, Stacy. Sorry.
Dee, your courage has
Yes.
soothed me today. I'm struggling with the choice that I made today to call Childline. I know now I made the best decision. Thank you for freeing me. Erica, listen, sister. Sometimes you got to do what we got to do. And I applaud you for that. You just
Yeah.
gave me goosies. I applaud you for that. We have to go
Right. Me
with our
too. Oh my gosh.
Yes. We have to go with our intuitive spirit. We have to go with what we think. And I'm telling you, I don't know what would have happened if somebody had asked me. Nobody asked me when I was a child why my face was sad all the time. Nobody asked. Do you understand? Nobody asks. And so
Sorry.
every time I'm around a child, first of all, I ask my kids all the time, but I ask my kids straight up questions to the fact that they're freaked out by it. Like, oh my God, mama, please don't ask me that anymore. But when I'm around
Yeah.
children, and you see them and you see their faces and you see signs, ask the question. Sometimes all they want is for somebody to ask them. And if you can't ask them, then if they can't speak it, then you need to encourage them to write a note. Maybe they can write a note, and pass it on. And even as an adult, sometimes it's hard for them to speak it. And if it's hard for them to speak it, maybe they can write you. However, so this young lady who I gave a safe word to, and I told her, call me, text me, whatever you have to do. It doesn't matter what time of night. You just let me know Um, let me know. There will be no judgment. But I made sure she understood that word that you're going to give me is the word that's going to tell me I have to call 911. So if it's just you need me to be on the phone so you can hear what's going on, you can give me something else. So we worked
Yeah.
out a system, and there were times when she was locked behind closed doors, her and her two boys, while the abuser was on the other side raging. She would call me and I would say, "Do I need to call 911?" And she would say, "No, if you call 911, you're going to make it worse." Do you understand? So
Wow.
that's why the don't judge is so important. However, lending support, speaking to them, giving them a safe ear and a safe place is
Yes.
critical. It's critical. And understanding that you can't make anybody do anything that they don't. But part of the reasons
Right.
why I am such an advocate for children, and if you ever watch me on anything and I speak about children and the abuse of or the neglect of, the passion is running fiery within me, because children are born, as we all are, we are born innocent. We're put into this world pure. We come out happy, most of us
Yes.
screaming, crying, but we're crying because we're free. And we come out and everybody's loving on us and they're giving us all the love and support and the joy. And then one day, something happens that we're able to connect, and it can change our lives in the worst way ever. And typically, because I'm a hypnotherapist, as D-Lynn is, whenever I do hypnotherapy and I'm talking with people about their childhood, a lot of times their first scene that they remember starts at 5 years old. It's very rare that I get a scene younger than 5, but 5 years old, 6 years old, big, strong, hurtful imprints. And then there's 9 and 10 years old. And then I get a lot of 12 and 13-year-old scenes. But guess what, guys? I also get 18
Mm-hmm.
and 19-year-old scenes. So I say that to say that as adults, as parents, as caregivers, as teachers, as coaches, whatever our role is, we must do a better job and help our people to help our children to shift those imprints, to change it in a positive way. I don't want my children, and don't get me wrong, none of us are perfect parents. So there's going to be something that is going to come up that they
Mm.
think that we didn't do right. But for God's sakes, can it not be child
Yes.
abuse? Can it not be sexual abuse? Can it not be that
Right.
type of imprint? If we pay attention and we can really help educate ourselves, be aware. Let's see. Sophie, Stacy, child sexual abuse is so prevalent in Jamaica. I love my homeland, but is not addressed as it should. So, Sophie, I don't know if you know this. Actually, you do know this, Sophie. I think you know this. I am also Jamaican, and I was born in Jamaica, and I grew up in Jamaica, and a lot of my passion that I come from, the sexual abuse that happened to me happened between young baby that I don't remember, but I've heard about, up to when I was 12 years old. And all of that happened as I grew up in Jamaica. And yes, it is very prevalent. Um, it's prevalent and it's unspoken, and it's freaking almost acceptable in my opinion. And I'm going to say this, Sophie, that I think a lot of people don't understand about sexual abuse. Just like domestic abuse is not just for women, sexual abuse happens just as much, if not more, to young boys. And even in our homeland, Sophie, Um, it's happening on a rapid scale to young boys. So, please, guys, do your research, educate yourselves, research, educate, protect the children, and find resources that can help
Yes.
to protect these children. So, as we are 5 minutes to go, I really want to just say thank you guys. And I want to do a summary wrap up because I think it's important. Erica, thanks for sharing. Sophie, thanks for sharing. Juanita, thanks for sharing. I think we had Annette, D, thanks for sharing. And whomever else is out there that's participating by listening, I really encourage you to um, my call to action today, because I can't get off of here without having at least one, is for you to find a
Yes.
resource to educate yourself. That's a call to action. For me, there is,
Yes.
hi, Douglas, thanks. There is, oh, so thank you, Sophie Douglas. Yes. There is a, what do we called? Darkness to Light. There is a training that you can take. I believe it costs $25. As an educator, when I taught in the high school a couple years ago, I had to take it. It was a mandatory training. And it was the best training I ever took as it pertains to sexual abuse to children, or sexual abuse, period, because it really brought to the heart of things, and it went across races and social economic status, and it just showed how prevalent and broad and wide that is. 1 in 5 children are sexually molested in the United States before their 18th birthday. All right. And then there are resources and women's shelters that's out there, that there are secret shelters, and you may not find them on websites, but you will find them in certain organizations will have not the location, but the names of them. And I will put some of those links in the chat when we're done with this live, so that you can have that as a reference if you need it, or if you have anybody else out there that you think need these resources. But to wrap it up, I just want to thank you guys for coming. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is just an education month. It is not just the
Yes.
month you get aware and then do nothing. This type of
Right.
prevalence, it must stop, but it takes all of us to get involved. Please don't turn a blind eye because it is not your household. Please try to find
Right.
different things that you may be able to do for the community, or for the people, or the children, or the women, or the men around you. Do not discriminate because of gender. Do not discriminate because of race. And please, whatever you do, be a support, not judge and jury. And so I think, yes, it must stop. And so Dee and I will take the opportunity to talk about this throughout um, the month of October. So next week, Dee, I have a friend that's going to come on and talk, but he's going to talk about the the energy and the law of attraction, and really how to bring goodness into our lives, and how to shape our lives by believing what we want. And then after that, I am thinking it might be a great idea to see if we can bring some resources on to talk about more about domestic violence awareness, and more
Yes.
about sexual abuse awareness, and what can be done. So for everybody who had a comment today, I am going to send you a copy of my book, Live Your Truth and Break the Cycle. And it is a book that I wrote about my
That's nice.
experiences in journeying through child sexual abuse. It also have stories of some other people that shared their stories in the book in hopes of helping others and bringing awareness. And so I will, if you're comfortable, so we have Douglas Marine, we have Juanita, we have Erica. Erica, you have a copy of my book already. I think you might. I have Juanita, Sophie. If you guys don't mind and you want to drop me an inbox with your address, I will send you a copy of my book and ask that what you do with that is you spread the awareness. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much, Dee, for sharing. This has been
Hold on.
awesome.
Hold on, Stacey, before you go. I know you. We gotta see if anybody got any questions. I mean,
Sure.
because we don't. If they got questions.
Yes. So before you hang up, before you leave the live, does anybody have any questions? Erica said yes. Go for it. If you have any questions, drop it in and let us know. I would love to have that. I will send you my address. Thank you for that. And we will talk more about that. And maybe it's something that you can share on our show at some point. Transformation Tuesday is about transformation. It's about change. It's about growth. It's about healing. It's about all of that. And so any topics, books, anything that that can be used in that manner, or we can share, is welcomed. What other resources for someone to receive help if they don't want to see a counselor? So there are many other resources. You can talk to if you trust your pastor, your minister, or anybody within the clergy. Sometimes they have counseling resources. And then there is Dee, and then there is Stacy. We are both, I'm a certified life coach. I'm not a therapist, but a certified life coach. So I am able to help people to gain clarity. But I am a hypnotherapist. Then and with that, I am able to help people to tap into any blocks they're having, help them to remove blocks of trauma, stress, eating disorders, smoking habits, weight, any of that. So please know that Dee and I we do offer that service as well. And if you're
Yes.
looking for anything else, then there are many other services out there, but we are available for you. And please feel free to DM us or send us a message. And I will put my email, and Dee, you can also put your email and in our chat. Any other questions?
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much
We
for
appreciate y'all
joining.
showing up every week.
Yes, you guys are loyal. Love it. Thank you. And be mindful, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again next week.